Welcome to today's webinar on change without chaos, mastering change management in your agency. So whether it's adapting to new client demands or streamlining internal processes or scaling your business, we know that change is constant in agency world. Yet, as we all know, it's not easy. Change often brings resistance, uncertainty, and if not managed well, can disrupt teams' creativity and client relationships. But here's the good news. When done right, change management isn't just about navigating challenges. It's a powerful tool to drive growth, align teams, and future-proof your agency. So over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll dive into why change often goes wrong and why people resist it, and how you as an agency leader can turn resistance into, hopefully, opportunity. We'll also explore a proven 8-step process and share communication hacks tailored to agency environments to help you lead change with clarity and confidence. Before we dive in, for those who haven't joined our previous webinars, I'm Steve. I'm one of the co-founders here at the Agency Works, and I've been working with agencies for well over 23 years now. And as usual, I am joined by my colleague, Kate, who is a principal consultant here at the Agency Works, and also somebody who has vast experience at working at different agencies prior to working for Agency Works. So welcome, Kate.
Hello, nice to be here again.
Again, so let's start. We all start our webinars with kind of defining and what's the definition of what we're covering today. So this is according to two guys, Cameron and Green, back in 2015. In their publication, Making Sense of Change, change management is a structured approach to transitioning individuals, teams, and organizations from a current state to a desired future state.
And this is something we see every day, isn't it, Ben? So not only in the onboarding of a new system, like Synergist, for instance, but also in helping agencies change processes and perhaps optimizing their current system. And we can see that change is hard and sometimes even painful. And what we want to avoid is looking back and saying to ourselves, oh, why didn't we do that? Or if only we'd thought of this. So how can we prevent that? So firstly, let's look at some common change management mistakes we see and what you can do to avoid them. So the first is that change isn't compelling enough. It's one of the biggest reasons change fails. You need a good reason to change, so it needs to be clear, valid, and desirable. Ask yourself, why does this change need to happen? And what are the underlying causes for it? And how can I articulate this clearly to others? People don't think it's required. So we have a saying here at the Agency Works, what got us here won't necessarily get us there. So meaning change is necessary for future success. And despite this, people can still be resistant because they fear it and don't understand why it has to happen. So if you can demonstrate that you wholeheartedly behind the change by walking the talk as such, and frame it as a requirement, not an option. Thirdly, it's not communicated clearly. So excellent communications is a must. If you talk about change in a negative way, or your instructions are unclear or potentially even absent, people will lose motivation and interest. So make sure the reason for change and how you plan to execute it are communicated regularly and clearly. It doesn't involve the right people. So leaders are obviously essential during change process, but so are many other people across the organization. So don't forget about them. Otherwise, you kind of end up creating this us versus them mindset. Identify who will be most affected by the change, as well as those who are best placed to be your change champions, and combine these forces and get everyone on board. And fourthly, it's poorly planned. So often change fails because of lack of things like resources, funding, and deadlines. So make sure you consider all of these things and draw up a detailed plan of action. And success can take too long to arrive. So change projects often attract lots of sort of buzz and attention up front. But if it takes too long, people kind of get, well, bored, really. So be sure to factor in some quick wins early on to keep motivation and momentum high. And lastly, there's no follow-through activity. So even if you've already achieved some of your quick wins, you can't sit back on your laurels. You need to push forward and get yourself across that finish line. Think about what you need to do next before you kind of declare that victory, and consider what you can do to motivate people and keep them committed to the project's success. So, in short, for change to succeed, it needs to be compelling, clear, and motivating. It needs to be supported by a robust plan of action that involves the right people, and it needs to include some quick wins, as well as follow-throughs to keep everyone going right through to the end.
Yeah, and we know that some people love change and the variety it brings, but for many it can feel uncomfortable and they will resist. And it's easy to think that this is through a lack of vision or even kind of some kind of discomfort. But there is a real psychology behind the resistance, especially if your colleagues think that any changes may impact on them negatively. So, for example, long-standing team members who may feel their position is better served by the old way of doing things. But don't be tempted to sweep this real fear under the carpet. You need to take it seriously and take steps to tackle it. So, why people don't like change? This we've adapted and is according to leadership and change management gurus Kotter and Schlesinger. There are four main reasons typically people will resist change. Serve one's self-interest. So this is such as perceived threat to job security or their status or their financial position. Next, we have misunderstanding or not understanding why change is needed or how it could benefit you or your agency. Low tolerance, which is preferring things to stay the way they are, which is pretty common. And then a different assessment of the situation because they disagree fundamentally with the need for change or what's best for your agency.
I love that cartoon on that slide, Vin. It really sums up, doesn't it, what people think about change. It's really good. And those are also true. And what you're saying is that whether it's your New Year's resolution to make it to the gym 3 times a week, which I am doing, or a new start with a new team at a job, or adopting new processes, or switching to a new system, top-rated agency management platform like Synergist, for instance. Change is inevitable, and it is emotional. And I think this change curve by Kubler-Ross shows this really well. So it describes the emotions people experience as they adjust to change, loss, and or shock. And it was initially created to help people understand the grieving process. But the model is really useful when you're thinking of introducing change into your business. And here you can understand more about how people react and respond to change, and how, with the right support, they ultimately come to adjust, accept, and even embrace it.
One of the foundations for understanding organizational change was developed by Kurt Lewin way back in the 1940s and still holds true today. His model, and it's useful, this is known as unfreeze, change, and refreeze, and it refers to the 3-stage process of managing change. Lewin was a physicist as well as a social scientist and explained organizational change using the analogy of changing the shape of a block of ice. And the concept is fairly simple. Imagine you have a block of ice that you'd like to be a different shape. First of all, we melt it, which is the unfreeze bit. Then we pour it into a different mold, which is the change part. And then you can solidify it into its new shape, which is the refreeze part. And he also mentioned that it's not an event, but a process. This theory was also backed up by the American change and leadership guru John Kotter in 1995, where he discovered an organization only has a 30% chance of making change a success which shows why implementing changes without any thought for how they will be received or adopted by your teams is absolutely not a good idea. And you need this buy-in early on rather than dropping changes on everyone out the blue. You need to keep your teams informed right from the start. So the Kotter 8-stage change model is seen as one of the most adopted management models, and for a good reason. It can really boost your ability to manage change, but also your likelihood of success as a result. So we've summarized his 8-step process here.
So the first one is create urgency. So here you need to highlight a big opportunity that will need to appeal to the heads and hearts of your teams. Now you don't need to be all doom and gloom, but you can explain how your company will benefit from the changes and how it could be detrimental not to introduce them. Your aim here is to bring everyone together with a common goal, sort of energized and enthused about what's in store.
Next, we have build a guiding coalition, which is basically asking members from all your teams and functions to offer their input. And remember that each team will be coming at this from a different viewpoint. So you need to make sure that we cover every area of your agency. Together, you can identify best new ways of working based on any new processes.
Yeah, and the third, are strategic vision and initiatives. So there'll be likely lots of ideas and potential at the early stages, and creating a strategic vision helps you keep focus, and linking all the concepts to a common aim and making sure you have a clear direction.
Next, we have enlisting a volunteer army. So this offers team members the chance to actively participate and make sure you recognise their efforts and inputs to encourage perhaps others to join in as well. Then we've got enable action, and this is by removing barriers. So that whole idea of we've never done it like this before, or we've always tried it and it didn't work. So expect plenty of statements along those lines. The aim here is to navigate around these obstacles to create new ways of working, not letting those obstacles grind you to a halt.
We've mentioned this times now, but generate short-term wins. So a lesson here, learned here, a process improved there. Change won't happen successfully in one fell swoop, but rather in a series of steps. So recognizing and celebrating each positive outcome, however small that might be, can really boost the efforts to engage your team.
And then use each win as a springboard for acceleration. It's adding momentum to your journey to hopefully turn your vision into reality.
Got a bit of a Teams call coming in there.
Yeah. What about your business partner ringing you right in the middle of a webinar? Unbelievable.
Oh, dear.
It just proves it's live anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one is institute change. So this is really important. Even when you've got great engagement from your teams, so your behaviors and actions have changed and everyone's on board, you can't take your eye off the ball. So this is where you really embed the new ways of working, turning them into everyday practice. So you're connecting the dots between the new behaviors and the better performance. And you keep on communicating about what benefits you're already seeing. And that way you're turning the new way of working into the normal way of working.
So we've looked at the 8-step change management process. Now we want to look at some best practice hacks for you to nail internal comms in your agency. First one for me is about identifying stakeholders, and this can be both internal and external. So we need to consider everybody who's impacted by the change. So that's from leadership to frontline staff, and different groups may have different and distinct concerns. So it's essential to map them out. And that includes all executives, managers, and any individual contributors. However, don't also forget your external stakeholders, such as clients, suppliers, or partners, who may also be impacted or affected by the change. So keep them informed. It builds trust and ensures alignment.
Education and communication. So don't just land changes on your team without any prior warning. Explain your reasoning, keep them informed, make sure you're highlighting the benefits. So good communication across your whole organisation will mean that there's no nasty surprises.
Next, participation and involvement. This is engaging everyone early on. It helps them feel like they're an integral part of the process. Ask for their input on what they'd like to see from the change, and involve all key stakeholders and individuals in shaping and guiding the decisions. This fosters ownership and ensures the change aligns with both their needs and perspectives.
Facilitation and support. So fear is a very real and very big part of resistance to change. So this is where your support comes in. So offering the right training and continuous support eases that transition, removing any sort of mental blocks, and it also alleviates any worries.
Yeah, negotiations. Some of your team members we mentioned previously may worry about losing influence or position due to any changes that are being introduced. So, for instance, they may feel their current responsibilities could become less relevant. So it's important to reassure them that this change is not about replacing them or their skills. Instead, incentivize their involvement by highlighting opportunities to take on new areas of responsibility and grow within the evolving landscape.
And listening and inclusion. So it can be tempting to sort of ignore or override concerns you feel are a barrier, but this won't win you confidence from your teams. So instead, listen and understand the genuine feedback and make sure you include these team members throughout the process.
And finally, make change anyway. You know that you need the change or a new process. You know what benefits it will bring, and you know how it forms part of perhaps your wider commercial strategy. You won't be able to please everybody, and nor should you try. There might well come a time when you just have to say, do you know what? It's happening. As behavior changes and as behavior change then becomes necessary, even those with objections may find they agree as it starts to show successes and benefit them on a day-to-day basis. So, as usual with our Agency Masters webinars, we like to leave you with our top 3 takeaways, and these are the 3 that we've chosen this morning.
So the first one, communicate clearly and consistently. So transparency is key. Regularly share the why, what, and how behind the change to ensure that everyone understands its purpose and value. And use multiple channels, so meetings, emails, and one-to-ones to address concerns and maintain that alignment.
Next is engaging and involving your team. So engage key stakeholders early in the process and involve team members in shaping the implementation. This fosters ownership, reduces resistance, and surfaces valuable insights. Celebrate small wins to build momentum and maintain morale.
And our last one of the webinar is provide adequate training and support. So we know change can be disruptive, so equip your team with the tools and knowledge they need to succeed. Make sure you offer hands-on training, accessible resources, and ongoing support to ease the transition and minimise that downtime.